Welcome to Discover Your Dreams, a space rooted in the grounded life philosophy where inner peace becomes the foundation for purposeful living. Here we explore emotional regulation, self-awareness, alignment, and self-trust, not as goals to achieve, but as practices that help us return to ourselves. Because life doesn't become meaningful when we become someone else. It becomes meaningful when we learn to come home to who we truly are. Before we begin today, take one slow, intentional breath. Let your shoulders soften. Notice the chair beneath you, the ground supporting you, the gentle rhythm of your breathing. For just a moment, bring your attention inward. Now think about the last time you felt a strong emotion. Maybe it was anger, grief, disappointment, fear, or frustration. Perhaps it was anxiety that seemed to arrive out of nowhere, or even joy so powerful it felt almost too big to hold. Think about that moment. What did you do with the feeling? Did you allow yourself to experience it? Did you try to distract yourself from it? Did you push it away and pretend it wasn't there? Did you tell yourself to get over it, or that you shouldn't feel that way? Or did the emotion become so overwhelming that it seemed to take over completely? Most of us were never really taught what to do with our emotions. We learned how to hide them, how to explain them away, how to judge them, how to fear them. But very few of us learned how to simply be with them. That's why today, I want to talk about one of the biggest misconceptions I see when people begin learning emotional regulation. They believe regulation means not feeling. They think being emotionally regulated means staying calm all the time, never getting upset, never crying, never feeling angry, disappointed, or afraid. But that isn't regulation. That's suppression. And the two are very different. Emotional regulation is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to stay connected to yourself while emotion moves through you. It makes space for what you feel without letting it control your behavior. It's learning to acknowledge your emotions with curiosity instead of judgment. To feel without drowning. To struggle without shutting down. To stay present without pushing your experience away. Because emotions are not the problem. They are the signals, messengers, part of what makes us human. The goal is not to eliminate them. The goal is to build the capacity to experience them safely, skillfully, and compassionately. And when we understand the difference between regulating our emotions and suppressing them, something begins to change. We stop fighting ourselves. We stop treating our feelings as enemies. And we begin to develop a relationship with our emotional world that is grounded in awareness, resilience, and self-trust. That understanding can transform not only how you navigate difficult moments, but how you experience your entire life. Many of us grew up hearing messages like, "Don't cry," "Calm down," "You're too sensitive," "Stop overreacting," "Be strong," "Don't make a scene," "You're fine." Whether those exact words were spoken or not, many of us received the same message beneath them. Some emotions were acceptable, others were not. Certain feelings were welcome, others made people uncomfortable. So, often, without realizing it, we learned to hide parts of ourselves. We learned to swallow our tears, to smile when we were hurting, to minimize our anger, to dismiss our fear, to carry our grief quietly. Over time, we became incredibly skilled at pushing emotions down, not because we were weak, not because there was something wrong with us, but because we were adapting. trying to navigate the world the best way we knew how, trying to stay connected to the people around us, trying to avoid criticism, rejection, or conflict, trying to stay safe, trying to belong. For many of us, emotional suppression was never a conscious choice. It was a survival strategy, a way of protecting relationships, a way of protecting ourselves, and in some moments, it may have helped. But the problem is that emotions don't disappear simply because we ignore them. What is pushed down often finds another way to surface. It can show up as stress in the body, as irritability that seems to come out of nowhere, as anxiety, exhaustion, numbness, or a feeling of being disconnected from ourselves. Because emotions are not meant to be stored away indefinitely. They are meant to be acknowledged, understood, and processed. So if you recognize yourself in this, take a moment to offer yourself some compassion. You were not failing. You were learning how to survive within the environment you were given. And now, perhaps, you have an opportunity to learn something new. Not how to stop feeling, not how to become harder, but how to create enough safety within yourself that you no longer have to run from your emotions. How to meet them from curiosity instead of fear. And how to remain connected to yourself even when what you feel is difficult. There was a time in my life when I believed emotional strength meant staying composed no matter what. No matter how difficult things became, no matter how much pressure I was carrying, no matter how overwhelmed I felt inside, I thought strength looked like holding everything together, keeping a calm face, pushing through, continuing to function as if nothing was wrong. If I didn't cry, if I didn't show frustration, if I didn't let anyone see how much I was struggling, I could just keep moving. Then I told myself I was handling things well. And for a while, from the outside, it probably looked that way. I was getting things done, meeting responsibilities, showing up for other people, doing what needed to be done. But eventually, my body began telling a different story. Because emotions that are ignored do not simply disappear. They don't vanish because we refuse to acknowledge them. They remain with us, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be heard. And often, they find other ways to express themselves. Through constant tension in the shoulders and jaw. Through fatigue that no amount of rest seems to fix. Through irritability that appears out of nowhere. Through overwhelm that feels disproportionate to the situation. Through anxiety and restlessness. Through a growing sense of disconnection from ourselves. I began to realize that what I thought was strength was often avoidance. What I thought was resilience was sometimes simply endurance. And there is a difference. Because enduring an emotion is not the same as processing it. Ignoring an emotion is not the same as understanding it. And suppressing an emotion is not the same as regulating it. That realization changed everything. I started to see that regulation wasn't about pretending I was okay. It wasn't about controlling every feeling or maintaining perfect composure. It wasn't about never crying, never feeling angry, or never experiencing fear. True emotional regulation meant giving myself permission to acknowledge what was happening within me, to notice the emotion, to name it, to understand it, to make space for it without allowing it to completely take over. It meant learning that I could feel sadness without being consumed by it. I could feel anger without acting on it impulsively. I could feel fear without letting it make every decision for me. For the first time, I began to understand that emotional strength is not found in how well we hide our feelings. It's found in our willingness to face them, to sit with them, to learn from them. and to move through them with honesty, awareness, and compassion. Because suppressing an emotion may silence it for a moment, but regulating an emotion allows it to be felt, processed, and released. And that is a very different kind of strength. Suppression says, I shouldn't feel this. Regulation says, I do feel this, and I can handle it. That sounds like a small difference, but it changes everything. One pushes the feeling away, the other allows it to be there. One disconnects us from our experience, the other helps us stay connected to ourselves. And that's the difference between suppression and regulation. One rejects the emotion, the other makes space for it. One of the biggest shifts in my life happened when I stopped treating emotions like problems to solve. For years, my instinct was to get rid of uncomfortable feelings as quickly as possible. If I felt anxious, I wanted the anxiety to go away. If I felt sad, I wanted to feel better. If I felt angry, I wanted to calm down. I approached emotions as if they were obstacles standing in the way of peace. But over time, I began to see them differently. Instead of treating emotions like problems, I started treating them like messengers. Each emotion was bringing me information. Sometimes it was pointing toward a need that wasn't being met. Sometimes it was revealing a boundary that had been crossed. Sometimes it was drawing my attention to a fear, a loss, or something I hadn't fully acknowledged. And sometimes it was simply asking me to slow down and pay attention. That change in perspective helped me become less afraid of what I was feeling, because emotions no longer seemed like enemies. They became signals, guides, clues about my inner experience. Now, that doesn't mean every emotion tells the truth. Fear can convince us we're in danger when we're actually safe. Shame can tell us we're inadequate when we've done nothing wrong. Anxiety can make worst-case scenarios feel certain. Emotions are not always accurate interpreters of reality, but they are always meaningful. Even when an emotion isn't telling the truth, it's telling us something. Something about what we need, what we value, what we've experienced, or what may need our attention. And that's why every emotion deserves to be heard. Not believed automatically, not obeyed immediately, but heard. Simply acknowledged with curiosity and compassion. Because when we stop fighting our emotions and start listening to them, we often discover that they have been trying to help us all along. Take a moment to ask yourself, which emotions have I spent the most energy trying not to feel? Just notice, no judgment. Regulation isn't pretending you're okay. It's staying present with yourself while you're not okay. It's the ability to acknowledge what's true in this moment without being consumed by it. To notice what you're feeling instead of fighting it. To make room for the emotion without letting it define you. It's being able to say, I'm angry, grieving, scared, or overwhelmed. And then, just as importantly, remembering I am more than this moment and this emotion. Emotions can be intense. They can demand our attention. They can even make us feel as though they will last forever. But emotions are experiences we move through, not identities we become. Regulation helps us hold two truths at the same time. This is difficult, and I can stay with myself through it. It allows us to feel anger without losing ourselves in it, to experience grief without believing we will never feel joy again, to feel fear without letting it make every decision for us, to be overwhelmed without concluding that we are incapable. That is the heart of emotional regulation, not avoiding what we feel, not pretending it doesn't hurt, but meeting ourselves with enough awareness, compassion, and steadiness to stay present through the experience. And in doing so, remembering that no emotion, no matter how powerful, is bigger than our capacity to hold it. One of the greatest changes in my own life came when I stopped asking, how do I make this feeling go away? And started asking, what is this feeling asking me to notice? At first, that shift felt very small, but it completely changed my relationship with my emotions. Instead of seeing uncomfortable feelings as obstacles, I began to see them as sources of information. Not always pleasant information, not always easy information, but information worth paying attention to. Sometimes the answer was, you need to rest. You've been pushing too hard for too long. You've been giving more than you have to give. Your body is asking for care, not more effort. Sometimes the answer was, you crossed one of your own boundaries. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You ignored what you needed to keep someone else comfortable. Something inside you is asking to be honored. Sometimes it was, you're carrying something that was never yours. Someone else's expectations, someone else's emotions, someone else's responsibility. A weight you were never meant to hold. And sometimes the message was simply, slow down, pay attention, something here matters. The more I listened, the more I realized that emotions weren't showing up to punish me. They were trying to guide me. Not perfectly, but helpfully. They were pointing toward needs, values, wounds, hopes, and places within myself that needed care. That's when I stopped seeing emotions as the enemy. I stopped treating them as problems to eliminate. Instead, I began to see them as invitations. Invitations to listen, to learn, and to understand myself more deeply. Because beneath many difficult emotions is a question worth exploring. And sometimes, the moment we stop trying to make the feeling disappear is the moment we finally hear what it has been trying to tell us all along. Imagine standing beside a flowing river. Leaves drift along its surface. Some race past on the current. Others move more slowly. Some become caught on rocks or branches for a time before eventually continuing downstream. Our emotions are much like those leaves. Emotional regulation doesn't mean jumping into the river and being swept away by every feeling. Nor does it mean trying to stop the current or force the leaves to stay still. Instead, it means standing on the riverbank, observing what passes by with curiosity and compassion, and trusting that movement is part of the natural flow of life. Emotions are not meant to be held onto forever. They are meant to move through us. When we resist, suppress, or fight our feelings, we often give them more power and keep them with us far longer than they were ever meant to stay. When we allow them to be seen and acknowledged, they can continue on their way, just like leaves carried downstream. I'm curious, which emotion is hardest for you to simply allow without judging yourself? Anger, sadness, fear, disappointment, or something else? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes regulation looks like taking a walk before responding, giving yourself a little space before reacting. Sometimes it looks like crying instead of holding everything in, letting the emotion move through you rather than fighting it. Sometimes it looks like asking for help, allowing someone else to support you when you're carrying more than you can manage alone. Sometimes it looks like taking a few slow breaths before making a decision, creating enough pause to respond intentionally instead of reacting impulsively. Sometimes it's setting a boundary or stepping away from a conversation that's becoming overwhelming. Sometimes it looks like saying, I'm not ready to talk about this yet. and trusting that taking time to process is healthier than forcing yourself to respond before you're ready. The truth is, emotional regulation doesn't always look calm from the outside. It doesn't mean you'll never cry, never struggle, or never need support. It means you're staying connected to yourself in the middle of those experiences. None of these are signs of weakness. They're signs of awareness. They're signs of self-respect. They're signs that you're learning to care for yourself rather than abandon yourself. Because regulation isn't about having no emotions. It's about meeting your emotions in a way that helps you move through them with intention, honesty, and compassion. The next time you notice a strong emotion, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. What am I feeling? Where do I notice this in my body? What might this feeling be trying to tell me? Then, simply breathe. You don't have to fix the emotion. You only have to make room for it. Emotional regulation isn't about becoming someone who never feels deeply. It's about becoming someone who can feel deeply without abandoning themselves. That is what creates resilience, not emotional numbness, presence. The goal isn't to stop feeling. The goal is to stop believing that your emotions are something you need to fear. Every emotion is part of being human. And every time you stay present with yourself instead of running from what you feel, you're practicing the grounded life philosophy. Thank you for spending this time with me. Remember, the work isn't becoming someone else. The work is returning to yourself. Because that's where peace begins and where a grounded life is built. Until next time, take good care of yourself.